You walk past that windowsill every morning and you flinch a little, because there it is again. Another shriveled succulent, leaves gone soft and brown. The one plant everybody swore you couldn't kill. So you tell yourself you're just bad with plants. But that's the part that gets the diagnosis exactly backward. You didn't neglect that succulent to death. You loved it to death. The watering can, the rich soil, the fussing every few days, that is exactly what killed it. These plants come from places where rain barely shows up, and the toughest of them actually want to be forgotten. Today, I'll show you the ones that survive heat, drought, and a gardener who travels for 2 weeks and feels guilty about none of it. Here is the one thing to hold on to before we get to the list. A succulent stores its own water inside those thick, fleshy leaves. It is carrying a canteen with it everywhere it goes. When you water it every few days, you are pouring water into a plant that is already full, and the roots sit in damp soil until they rot from the inside out. The folks at World of Succulents put it plainly. Overwatering is the #1 killer of these plants, not drought. So think of your soil like a kitchen colander, not a sponge. You want a gritty, lean mix that lets water rush through and drain away in seconds, never the rich, dark, moisture-holding stuff that bagged potting soil is full of. I've got 13 tough succulents for you, sorted from the ones that shrug off a frozen winter outdoors, all the way to the easy indoor ones that live on a forgotten shelf. And keep an eye out for the one at number 7, because it survives a hard frost and a scorching heat wave in the same year, which almost nothing else on this list can claim. Number 13. Hens-and-chicks, also called sempervivum. If you live somewhere with real winters, and you've given up on succulents surviving outdoors, this is the plant that changes your mind. Hens-and-chicks are hardy roughly from Zone 3 through Zone 8, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac, which means they laugh off cold that would turn most succulents to mush. The name comes from the way the mother rosette, the hen, pushes out little baby rosettes all around her, the chicks. You plant one. By the end of summer, you have a dozen. Here's your care floor. Full sun and poor, rocky soil. Tuck them into a strawberry pot, a crack in a stone wall, or a shallow dish, and water them maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks in the heat of summer, less the rest of the year. The warning is the same one you'll hear from me a dozen times today. Never leave them sitting in a saucer of water. That little reservoir under the pot is where root rot starts. They do spread, so give them room or plan to pull the extras and hand them to a neighbor. The payoff is a tight cluster of green and burgundy rosettes that looks like something you'd find growing wild on a mountainside. Number 12. Sedum, the low-growing stonecrop kind. Sedum is the plant I recommend to anyone who tells me they forget to water. These creeping varieties, things like dragon's blood and blue spruce stonecrop, are hardy across most cold winter zones, roughly 3 through 9, so they cover nearly the whole country. They form a thick mat of fleshy little leaves that store water for a week or more, and they would honestly rather you ignore them. The care floor could not be simpler. Full sun, gritty soil, water once the ground is bone dry. The behavior caveat is that low sedum spreads sideways and fills in, which is wonderful in a rock garden and a nuisance in a tidy little pot. So plant it where spreading is a feature. And here's the budget angle. Snap off a stem, lay it on dry soil, and it roots itself in a couple of weeks. One $3 pot turns into an entire border by fall. The payoff is a living carpet that blushes pink and bronze when the cool weather rolls in. Number 11. Tall sedum, the autumn joy type. This is the upright cousin of the creeping stonecrop, and it earns its own spot because it does something different. It grows into a knee-high clump with broccoli-like flower heads that open pink in late summer and age to a deep copper rust by fall. Hardy in those same cold zones, roughly 3 through 9, it dies back in winter and returns every spring without a single thing asked of you. Your care floor is full sun and lean soil. Water it while it's getting established the first season, then step back and let the rain do the work. The caveat here is that rich soil and too much water make it flop over in the middle like a tired umbrella, so keep the soil lean and the spot sunny and it stands up proud. The payoff is a plant the bees and butterflies cover in September, and dried flower heads that hold their shape right through the first snow. Number 10. Hardy ice plant, also called Delosperma. The hardy ice plant looks far too delicate to be tough, covered in shimmering, daisy-like flowers, and yet it shrugs off drought as well as anything on this list. It's hardy in the milder cold zones, generally 5 through 9, and it carpets the ground with neon flowers in pink, purple, and orange that practically glow in full sun. The care floor is full sun, gritty, poor soil, and almost no water once it's established. Now the big warning with this one, because it's a little different. Ice plant fears wet far more than it fears cold. A soggy winter will kill it faster than a freezing one, so it absolutely must have soil that drains like a colander, especially where winters are wet. The North Carolina extension lists it as a tough, low ground cover, and it spreads to fill a sunny slope where nothing else wants to live. Payoff. The payoff is a sheet of color so bright the neighbors will ask what on earth you planted. If you've got a sunny, miserable spot in your yard where nothing survives, one of those first 4 is your answer. Number 9. Aloe vera. Now we move indoors or onto a warm porch for the plants that won't take a hard frost. Aloe vera is the one most folks already have a memory of, sitting on a grandmother's kitchen sill for kitchen burns. Outdoors, it's hardy only in the warm zones, roughly 9 through 11, so almost everyone grows it in a pot that comes inside before frost. The care floor is a bright window, ideally one that gets a few hours of direct sun, and water only when the soil is fully dry, which in winter might be once a month. The warning is twofold. First, never let it stand in water, because aloe rots at the base shockingly fast. Second, a safety note. The clear gel inside a leaf is the familiar part, but the yellow sap just under the skin is a strong irritant. So keep curious pets and grandkids from chewing on the leaves. The payoff is a sculptural fan of thick, spiky leaves and a living first aid kit you can snap a piece off of when you scorch your hand on a pan. Number 8. Jade plant. The jade plant is the one that turns into a family heirloom. Treat it right, which mostly means leave it alone, and it grows into a thick-trunked little tree that can outlive the person who planted it. Hardy outdoors only in the warm zones, around 9 through 11, it's a houseplant for the rest of us and a forgiving one. Your care floor is the brightest window you own and a deep soak only when the soil has gone completely dry, roughly every 2 to 3 weeks. The warning, and you can probably say it with me now, is that rich soil that stays damp will rot the roots, so plant it in a gritty mix in a pot with a drainage hole. Never a decorative pot with no escape for the water. One more caveat. Jade gets top-heavy as it grows, so a heavy clay pot keeps it from tipping. The payoff is glossy, coin-shaped leaves on a sturdy little trunk, the kind of plant people assume you've fussed over for years, when really you just left it on a shelf. Number 7. Snake plant. Here's the one I teased at the start, and it's the closest thing to an unkillable plant that exists. The snake plant, sometimes called mother-in-law's tongue, tolerates a cold draft and a baking radiator, a dark hallway and a bright sill, all in the same year. Outdoors, it's hardy only in the warm zones, roughly 9 through 11, but as a houseplant, it handles conditions that flatten everything else. The care floor is almost insultingly low. Any light from low to bright, and water once, sometimes less, in winter. The warning is that this plant is killed almost exclusively by kindness. Overwatering turns the base to mush, so when in doubt, do nothing. A safety caveat. The leaves are mildly toxic if chewed, so keep them away from pets that nibble. The payoff is a column of tall, architectural, sword-shaped leaves that asks for nothing and forgives a gardener who travels for 2 weeks without a sitter. We're past the halfway mark now, and if this is starting to convince you, the problem was never your green thumb. A quick subscribe keeps these budget gardening lists coming. Number 6. Haworthia, the little zebra succulent. If your brightest window is still not very bright, Haworthia is the small, polite succulent that handles it. These little rosettes, often striped white like a zebra, stay compact enough to live in a teacup and tolerate the lower light that would stretch and ruin a sun lover. According to the Old Farmer's Almanac, their only real threat is overwatering. Outdoors, they're warm zone plants, roughly 9 through 11, so for most of us, they're a tabletop houseplant. The care floor is bright, indirect light, and a small drink only when the soil is fully dry. The warning is the familiar one, gritty mix and no standing water. But with Haworthia, it matters double, because the plant is so small that a little excess water goes a long way toward rot. A nice caveat for households with animals. Unlike the aloe it resembles, Haworthia is pet safe, so it's a good choice if a cat shares your windowsill. The payoff is a jewel box little rosette, with translucent, almost glass-like leaf tips that catch the light. Number 5. Echeveria. Echeveria is the one that looks like a flower made of stone. The rosette you see in every wedding centerpiece and succulent arrangement. The Old Farmer's Almanac notes these are best grown indoors, or in containers in most of the country. Since outdoors they only survive the warm zones, around 9 through 11. They come in dusty blue, lavender, and rose, and they're as tough as they are pretty. The care floor is the sunniest window you have, because skimp on light and the tidy rosette stretches into a leggy mess reaching for the sun. Water deeply only when the soil is dry, then leave it be. The warning is that water sitting in the center of the rosette will rot the whole thing from the heart out. So water the soil, never the leaves, and tip out any water that pools in the middle. The caveat is that the dusty coating on the leaves, that pretty pale bloom, rubs off if you handle them, so admire with your eyes. The payoff is a perfect symmetrical rose that holds its shape for years. Number 4. Ghost plant, also called Graptopetalum. The ghost plant is the Echeveria's tougher, more forgiving country cousin, and it's the one I push on beginners who've killed a fancier rosette. It trails and tumbles over the edge of a pot in pale, ghostly gray and pink, and it is almost impossible to kill through neglect. In the warm zones, roughly 7 through 11, depending on the spot, it can even live outdoors, more cold-tolerant than most of its relatives. The care floor is bright light and a drink only when dry. The warning is the same gritty soil, no saucer rule, but the ghost plant is so eager to live that every single leaf you knock off will root itself into a brand new plant wherever it lands. That spreading habit is the behavior caveat. It self-sows all over nearby pots, which is either a gift or a mild mess depending on your patience. The payoff is a cascading moonlit gray waterfall of leaves for the price of one small starter plant. Number 3. Burro's tail. Burro's tail is the showpiece for a hanging basket or a high shelf, sending down long braided ropes of plump, blue-green leaves that look like something out of a fairy tale. It's a warm zone plant, around 9 through 11 outdoors, so most of us hang it indoors near a bright window. And it asks almost nothing of you. The care floor is bright light and a soak every 2 to 3 weeks at most. The warning is part care, part handling. Overwater it and the stems rot, of course, but also those plump leaves drop at the lightest bump, so hang it somewhere it won't get jostled. The caveat, and it's a happy one, is that every dropped leaf can become a new plant, so keep a tray of dry soil under it and let the fallen leaves root themselves. The payoff is a living, trailing curtain of green that can grow several feet long over the years. Number 2. Panda plant. The panda plant is the one you'll want to reach out and pet with soft, fuzzy, silver-green leaves edged in chocolate brown freckles. That velvety fuzz isn't just charming, it's the plant's own sunscreen, which tells you how built for harsh, dry places it is. Outdoors, it's a warm zone plant, roughly 9 through 11, and a houseplant everywhere else. The care floor is bright, indirect light, and water only when fully dry, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. The warning has a wrinkle. Because the leaves are fuzzy, water that sits on them doesn't dry off well and can cause spotting and rot, so water the soil at the base and keep the leaves dry. The caveat is that it's a slow grower, so don't expect a jungle. It stays a tidy, well-behaved little plant. The payoff is the softest succulent you'll ever grow, a plant that genuinely feels like petting a kitten's ear. And before the last one, here's the small mid-list reminder. Every plant on this list dies the same way, from too much love and too much water, and survives the same way, from a gritty mix and a gardener who walks away. Number 1. Christmas cactus. I'm closing with a Christmas cactus on purpose, because it's the one that rewards a forgetful gardener with a gift. It's a different sort of succulent, a jungle plant rather than a desert one, so it likes a touch more water than the others, but it still thrives on a hands-off routine and can live for decades, passed down through a family like good china. Indoors, it does well across the country, and outdoors, only in the warmest zones, roughly 10 through 12. The care floor is bright, indirect light and water when the top inch of soil is dry, a little more often than the desert succulents, but still far less than a fern or a flower. The warning is that even this thirstier succulent rots if it sits in a soggy saucer, so the no standing water rule still holds. The caveat is that it blooms in response to long, cool nights, so a chilly spare room in fall coaxes out the flowers. The payoff is a cascade of hot pink or red blooms right around the holidays, on a plant your grandmother may well have grown from the very same cutting. So there you have your 13. And I know 13 plants can feel like one more overwhelming list to fail at, so I'm going to make this easy. Don't buy all of them. Pick 3, just 3. Maybe a hens-and-chicks for the front step, a snake plant for the dark hallway, and a jade for the kitchen window. Pot them this week in a gritty, fast-draining mix, set them where they get good light, and then do the hardest thing of all, which is nothing. Walk away. Let them dry out. Let them be forgotten the way they were built to be. Picture it by next summer. A windowsill of plump, healthy rosettes catching the morning light. A porch that survived your 2-week trip without a sitter, and not one shriveled brown leaf in sight. These plants don't need a green thumb. They need a gardener who knows when to leave well enough alone, and now that's you. If this helped, subscribe for more budget gardening you can actually keep alive, and tell me down in the comments which 3 you're going to start with.